Pleasure to be here, and especially folks who are working with or considering ClickFox, because I've really found it to be a tremendous tool for rethinking the whole next direction of personalization at scale, which is really, in the end, what a lot of this is about. And what I'd like to do is, I notice you've been very down into the details of how to get some of the data programs going, how to think about the analysis. I'd like to step up from a senior management's point of view to say, how did they think about getting these kinds of programs in place? What are some of the broader things you've got to hijack and reorient in order to get these kinds of programs going? Because it is, I noticed the point of someone saying, did you steamroll over them? Because there are a number of just momentum directional things in many companies that just kind of go against the grain of where you'd like to go if you're really doing journey management well. So I'm going to start by talking about a client who's a bank. This is a bank in Europe. And they were finding that for small business lending, it's actually it's a major anxiety for a small business to come forward and ask for money. And trying to get growing share in a small business market is usually a matter of a lot of foot soldiers going out there, banging on the doors of small businesses, trying to get them feeling comfortable both with the concept of taking out a loan in the first place and what they're going to do with it, and you as a lender who's going to hold them to task for paying it back. And that's costly, it's hard to scale, and it really requires stepping back and rethinking the journey. And so the way they've reconceived it, I'm going to walk through how this works and then step back and use this as the basis to talk about what it took to reorient things to make these kinds of journeys happen. So they start by pitching to most of their small business clients in general that they should be managing their cash management with the bank through an app that most of them really manage on a tablet. So their small business, in this case Miller's Hardware, accesses the bank on a regular basis for cash management. And all of a sudden, Joseph gets a message saying, we actually think you could expand your inventory. The bank sends him this kind of message, which is almost like futuristic beyond belief from the point of view of the small business. A bank is telling me that I should increase my inventory. Well, the bank explains why. They've actually gotten feeds from Trulia, the real estate selling company, where they have the listings of all real estate and everything that's happening in a catchment area online. And the bank pulls in feeds from that to see that around that hardware store, in that store's catchment area, real estate prices are going up, there's a lot of turnover and sales, which certainly means a need for hardware and home renovation. Plus, they look at Facebook and social media feeds within the geographic area, and people are actually talking about home improvement and gardening. And they actually share this information with Miller to help him understand why they think he would actually be a good candidate. Then they ask him, would you like to apply for a loan? Would you like to get more funds? And he's able to get $50,000 smoothly through. So right then and there, let's just, for a moment, let's just hold before going through the rest of this journey. Because a lot of things are going on here, because not only has the bank brought together a whole bunch of information proactively, churning through a database that's saying who are the small businesses for whom a loan would work. They then have the contact strategy to get to that small business, and then the back office ability to be able to execute that loan completely end-to-end digitally. So as you're thinking about a journey and trying to make things happen, you've got to be able to enable all of these steps to happen to fuel the touch points that you're going to have in the journey. So I know ClickFox focuses a lot on things around the analytics and what journeys work and what doesn't. But you also have to think about, if you're pushing the journeys forward, what really is the content of the journey? What is the stuff that people are going to interact with? What is the capability that we want to give them so that they have a fundamentally different experience? But then it goes one step further. Not only do they give him the loan, but the bank also has a lot of customers who use their app, consumers, in that catchment area. And Miller can set up a marketplace where he can actually offer targeted incentives to people to come shop at his store. So he can set up either discounts or points or things like that, and the bank guides him as to what are the kinds of programs for people like him that have made sense before. So he's able to set up those programs. Those are then distributed to consumers in the area. And then also people who are walking by who have the bank's app get an incentive to come into the store. And all of that is tracked and managed and proven to Joseph Miller that his loan is paying off, that the dance with the bank is going to lead to higher profits and sales, and the bank is actually able to monetize the risk that they've taken by driving the traffic into the bank, so they're able to have Miller pay off the loan way more quickly. So this is a pretty complex journey from the point of view of the hardware store. This is real, this is happening in Europe, this is scaling across multiple countries that this bank is doing. They are not only doing it in this area, they're doing it with restaurants, and they're picking off verticals that they're gradually rolling this out into because some of the credit criteria and the incentives are different. But this is a whole end-to-end journey. Now, the reality is they didn't just simply conceive of this, did it, and it magically worked. It takes a lot of test and learn, trying things out, trying to figure out in the first place which are even the segments for which this would make sense to even do. There are a lot of back office capabilities that they've had to line up in order to do it. You can't get something like this going if you've got 5% of 100 people working on a project like this scattered across the bank. You've got to actually mobilize in much more of a scrum team fashion to attack this. So they're creating more and more journeys like this. System like ClickFox underlies helping to understand what's going on in the journey, but there's a whole lot also that has to happen to make that journey possible. And as you think about innovative journeys and where the next steps are in terms of thinking about personalization at scale, there's a few things I'm going to walk through now that you've got to think about in order to set up these kinds of bigger brand-moving programs. Because it's one thing to do a lot of micromanagement to say we can get calls out of the call center and move them online, and we can do shifts in the journey to make it more efficient. Where it's really going to go, though, is the journey becomes the brand. And this defines the brand in the eyes of that small business. The journey is the brand. Look, a loan is a loan, right? I mean, that's just cash for an interest rate. But what really defines this is the journey. That's the differentiator. And that's where ClickFox and these systems is really going to drive things too. Once you get a lot of the basics of cost management done, then it's how do you start using it to really differentiate.